and times each age group will be participating, but each age group will have 2 nights or 2 different times where they will be evaluated and asked to attend. So you can check out, again, the days and times listed on our website and maybe get those on your calendar. We do ask that all players participating in baseball for this summer season make at least one of these eval days. It's good for us as coaches and administrators to get eyes on each of the players so that we can do our diligence in not only making competitive and well-balanced house league teams, but also to select our tournament teams, which the process is one and the same. So whether you're playing tournament team baseball or not, whether your child intends to participate in that or not, we do ask that you come to our eval nights just so we get a sense of our groups and our age levels, and we're able to see all the kids. So it's also just a good chance for them to get their initial baseball workouts in. So those are coming up the week of March 7th. Check out the website with the dates on those, and there will be at all 4 days will be at the field house at UMD.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. So the reason we wanted to open there in terms of timetable, it speaks to the deadline for registration. We'd like to have all families participating registered on or before March 1st. That gives us a full week leading up to evaluations to organize, set groups, make sure we understand how many to expect at each age level. So March 1st is the goal date. It's kind of a soft date. We will try to accommodate folks with extenuating circumstances off of that. But for the most part, we'd like to have everyone registered and in the system by March 1st, which is just a couple of short weeks from now.
For those of you that haven't had a kid play in 709 before, if you're moving up from minors to majors this year or intend to, those evals are our tryout days for major players. So your players will be evaluated. All the majors coaches will be a part of the evaluation process. And then if you're playing at Lake Park or playing at Western, each association therein will have their own selection process for getting teams, the house league teams slotted in. So if you're not familiar with the process there, we try to make it as much of a workout as possible, not to put pressure on the kids, but they're just going through their hitting reps, their throwing reps, their glove work, fielding work. And it's just kind of a fun way for them to get some workouts in while we're able to kind of gather some information about the kids and try to build competitively balanced teams.
Good point. I would go back to Tom's point regarding the week of evaluations. Each age level will be seen 3 out of those 4 days. And we encourage the families to try to make sure their kid gets to all of those days if possible. That's the preference of the organization. But we need the player to be there at least one of those days. But we'd certainly like to see them for all of the available times. So we will be posting a schedule through registration and on our social media page for when majors time slots will be, when modified time slots will be, and when the full field time slots will be. Let's break there and just open it up for questions from the group. Feel free to go off mute, introduce yourself if you have any questions just about the registration deadline or the week of evaluations.
Say, I got a question. If we're on vacation that week that you're having evals, is there going to be makeup evals?
Go ahead and contact us offline, Randy, and
Yep.
We'll find a time. Usually there's, like I said, we get right into team selection, drafting, and tournament organization following that last Saturday of evaluations. But leading up to that, we can potentially find some time prior to the week of evaluations to get into strike zone or some of the other facilities available to us to have a look at kids that are completely unavailable for that week.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
say this is Eric Wertz. Just want to make sure I understand. So the website, the date, the age groups will be posted for which days you want them to come in.
Yep.
So, okay. And then you want to see those kids at least one day, but you'd prefer that they showed up for all the available.
Yeah, ideally, the more we see them, the more accurate of an evaluation we can provide. But quite frankly, beyond just making sure we get the teams how we want them to be and where we need to be in terms of balance and competitive gameplay, it's a fun time for the kids. There's a little stress involved on the front end, thinking that what team am I going to be on? But you'll find that it's very disarming, that all the coaches have a requisite experience and are able to kind of work with the kids and create a fun and high energy atmosphere. So it's more about making sure the kid is excited for the season.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Just a question here, Seth, too, or maybe a comment. I'm not trying to make it about something else, but when you guys figure out those days or assign those days, just a heads up that is hockey playoffs that week as well for a lot of these age kids.
Okay.
So I know they
Yep.
have games Tuesday, Thursday, possibly Tuesday, Thursday that week. So I don't know if
Yep.
that
We are in the process of doing some digging,
perfect.
to figure
Yeah.
out those schedules.
Yep, and I'm
I
not
just kind
telling
of
you-
started that today. So
Perfect. I'm not telling you don't do it those days, but just, if you weren't aware, I just want you to know.
If anyone on the call here wants to share their conflict days with whatever age group that might be, that would be helpful to us. If you could just email
Sure.
the Duluth 709 email address and say,
Okay.
like, there's Pee Wee playoffs these nights, that could be helpful for us for determining which groups might go on certain nights. So if you
Sure.
know some of that stuff already, that would help us out, whether it's basketball or a choir concert or anything that might be happening that might be a conflict for a larger majority of the kids. We'd appreciate knowing some of that stuff. We
Okay.
might not be able to figure that all out on our own.
Yeah, I think one of the questions we get year over year, just to kind of give you guys a sense of how we plan, is one of the hardest things to do as part of the season administration and planning process is getting indoor space in the spring for these kids to get looked at and for them to get some time. Obviously, Wardwell's field house is in high demand through the college. CSS's field house is not available right now due to COVID restrictions. And UWS's field house is similar in that regard. So pre-COVID, this used to be a little easier, but still a very daunting portion of the season. The reason we have it that week, that second week of March, just as kind of a transparency thing for everybody, is because that's spring break week at UMD. And it's the only time we can really get big blocks of time in the indoor large facility to accommodate as many kids as we need to see. So ideally, we would love to have a big complex and more available time, but we also have to get in where we fit in with snow still on the ground and whatnot. So just want to let everybody know that there's a good amount of thought and process that goes into what we can and can't do there. Any other questions just in regards to evaluations or
Yes,
registration?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
With regards to evaluation, I'm glad you brought that up. The evaluation is going to go ahead and, pardon the pun, encompass the house team assignments, and also if the player and parents want their player to go ahead and try out for a tournament traveling team, those evaluations are one and the same.
Yeah, we don't want to put them through any more additional scrutiny than we need to. So we will take a look and create scores for each player for the coaches to take a look at to create balanced and equal recreational teams for the week. And then we also look at those scores for developing what kids should be invited to which travel ball team at each age group. So we do that with one and the same. And that's all encompassed as part of that week. So you'll get a phone call in the weeks following evaluations, letting your child know what recreational team he's going to play on, and also potentially an invite to a tournament team. I think we had about 80% of our kids that played house league last year also participated in tournament baseball. So more often than not, we try to find room for just about everybody when it comes to tournament teams throughout the season, throughout the weekend calendar for those that want to participate beyond just the weekday schedule.
One more question, Seth.
Sure.
With regards to hitting evaluations, is it off the tee? Are you hitting into a net? Are you throwing to them?
Sure.
Kind of curious about that.
You want me to take that one?
Yeah,
Sure.
go ahead.
So our in general, our format for the evals is it's station work. You know, on the hitting side specifically, to answer your question, yes, the main evaluation is happening with in a batting practice format with a pitched ball overhand from like a 40-foot distance, and the kids taking, you know, 8 to 10 swings in a set. And then there's other hitting stations as well where coaches are evaluating, but primarily it is a pitched ball. They might have a tee station or a soft top station for a warm up, but the spotlight's on a little bit more in the pitched ball session. When it comes to fielding, the kids will be run through a traditional, you know, ground ball infield type station where we're evaluating their footwork, their glove work, their throwing. Same thing with outfield station. You know, there's enough room in the field house for us to get fly balls and do fly ball work. And we try to get the kids moving around to see who can track the ball and catch the ball and then make a good quality throwback, etc. So it's run like a honestly like a practice would be, where we're trying to get as much good quality baseball repetition in as we can, and really get to see the kids in a baseball like environment as much as we can without, you know, obviously the ability to play games. But yeah, one thing I wanted to touch on, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It's a point of clarity. Thank you.
One thing that I would want to touch on in regards to the evals, and I think we get this question most years, is are we going to be having any workouts leading up to this? We understand completely that for the majority of these kids, this is going to be their first throw of the year, right? First catch of the year. And we don't have expectations of these players to come in and be in midsummer form by any means. I think, you know, we've been doing this long enough to understand where these kids are going to be at, given that it's March, and given that this is their first rep or two of the year doing all these activities, right? So I know the kids can maybe be a little uncomfortable starting out. I think what we see, and if your child can make it to multiple days of the eval by the end of a week of workouts, 2 or 3 of them, they get pretty dialed in, and we have a pretty good sense of who they are as a baseball player, regardless of the rust they might have in their game. So don't let them get discouraged by the fact that maybe they haven't done anything leading into this. We get that, and we'll understand kind of where everybody's at.
Great answer.
With regard to the coaches' evaluations, if we're having I volunteer to coach my son's team. We're having to try to be in the majors. Well, does that mean I'm one of the coaches evaluating?
Oh, not this year, Darren. So what will happen this year is your son will go through evaluations, and as part of that, he will potentially be drafted into a majors roster. And as part of that draft, we also let the drafting coach make him aware that you're interested in helping and co-coaching or assistant coaching. And so he knows when he's drafting your son that he's also drafting a good assistant and somebody reliable to come and help with the team. So once you're into a team, the following year you would be a part of the evaluation process, potentially ask to help as part of evaluations, run a station, or even potential draft players for that team in the subsequent year. But for this year, you can just be a dad as part of this process until your son is drafted onto that team, and then you're a part of the staff at that point.
I have a question, Seth.
Sure.
With regards to the gentleman posing that question about coaching, I signed up in Sportsnet, and I know you have to go through some protocols, background checks, and concussion protocol.
Yep.
The player that I'm going to help sponsor or whatever, I'm not a direct relative, but I certainly would like to help coach on his team. And I don't know what the protocols are with that if they have to be a direct relative or whatever, but
No, I think the mandate, this is actually federal law now, is anybody that's going to be working with youth athletes needs to go through a background check.
sure.
And there's certain concussion training and safe sport training we ask our coaches to go through. So if you've registered as a coach through the coaching registration on the 709 website, you
Yes.
will start getting correspondence once the time comes for getting that paperwork completed and completing the proper training. So there's a lot of guys that have been through it recently that I think it's a 2-year renewal. So not everybody has to do it year over year, but for new incoming coaches, we can guide you through that process here post-evaluation.
Great. I'll
And
be
we
waiting for
also
that.
have plenty of coaches in the organization who are not family of players. So you're
Tom.
not alone there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All good questions. Let me open it to the floor just to make sure there aren't any others before we keep moving into different subject matter.
I had one more. This is the first time I would have had a child old enough to play in the majors potentially, but I understand there's some disconnect now between the 709 maybe in Lake Park, or like, ought I register for the 709 baseball before the evaluations, regardless of whether I'm certain my son would play in the majors or the minors?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nate. How old is your son?
10.
Okay, that's perfect age. So for a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, what we would do to get them in the evaluation process is have them enrolled with Duluth 709 baseball. That will allow us to get them in the registry and make sure we're knowing to expect them for evaluations. In the event they're drafted, you'll be a part of a majors program and on a majors team. If they were not drafted onto a team, they'll be assigned to a minors team as part of Lake Park. And we will work with you at that time to re-enroll you in Lake Park and refund you your Duluth 709 registration. So there's a handful of families that we do that with every year. And the ultimate goal there is making sure that the player is playing at a similar ability level to his peers and hopefully creating a productive and enjoyable season.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
One key point there, and Seth mentioned this, your child for evals will not be on our lists unless you've registered. So if you intend to try out for majors and be a part of 709 tournament team evaluations, we really need you to register before that March 1st deadline or before evals, so that we're on our list. And we're not going to, in the past we have done, and some of you that have been through this process before, we have kind of organized the tryout days during the tryout days. We're going to try to avoid that this year so that we can get right into baseball when we get to UMD on those days and kind of hit the ground running with our evaluation process. So please go to the website and register. If you have any questions about that process, we can certainly help you out with that.
Good point. Thanks for the question, Nate. Anybody else? Okay. I think we're ready to move on to the next agenda item here. Based on what I'm looking at here, we're talking about levels of play, which kind of dovetails nicely with evaluations. I'll start at the youngest level of play for 709, which is majors. This age group is made up of typically predominantly 10 and 11-year-old players. 12-year-old players typically play on the modified field. We have a good number of more advanced 9-year-olds that also play at the majors level. 9-year-olds are welcome to come and be a part of the evaluation process. We also have every year, sometimes a couple 8-year-olds that are also part of the process. Our goal at each one of our levels is to make sure that each player is playing with similar ability kids in equal team settings wherever possible. And sometimes there are 8-year-olds that are just as capable as the 10 and 11-year-old older boys. And there are other times where a 10 and 11-year-old is just beginning baseball and is better suited to play a year of minors before moving back up into majors the following year. that is a big part of the evaluation process. So making sure these kids are playing at a level that they're going to enjoy and compete at is essential to having a good experience. So again, majors is consisting predominantly of 10 and 11-year-old kids, with some 8 and 9-year-olds playing as part of that program. The next level up is predominantly 12 and 13-year-old players. That's typically 7th and 8th graders. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, I should say, depending upon birthday. The modified level is a bit bigger field compared to majors. Majors plays at a 46-foot mound. Modified has those kids playing at a 52-foot mound. Majors has 60-foot bases, while a modified field has 75-foot bases. The modified field is also a little bigger in the outfields. Our outfields at Lake Park are 230 to 240 feet in distance, compared to a typical majors field, which is right around 200, 210. So it's getting those bigger kids into a larger size setting, which not only they're typically capable of handling, but it also gives them a nice bridge before they're asked to play full field at the 14 and 15-year-old level. So that's the modified level, 12 and 13-year-olds. And then our eldest level is our full field level, which consists of 14 and 15-year-olds. These are 8th, 9th, and 10th graders, depending upon their birthdays. And they play from the full adult distance. That's a 60-foot mound and a 90-foot base. Art Vaughn Field at Lake Park is a full field, if you're familiar, as is Field 5 at Wheeler. Of course, Wade Stadium is also a full field, if you're thinking about the proper distance for those kids. So those are the 3 different divisional levels we offer. Any questions as to the levels of play?
Seth, Aaron Bradford here.
Hey, Aaron.
Hey, yeah, just wondering. My son is, he's 11 years old, but I think fully capable of playing in that 12, 13, along with all of his friends are in the same grade level. But how does that impact the tournament teams? If he were to make a tournament team, can he play 12, 13, but then play 10 and 11 in tournament ball, or does he have to stick with the same thing?
That's a good question, Aaron. I know we've allowed it before. I think one of the challenges your son would face is if he played at the majors level on the weekend and the modified level during the week, is there's certainly some timing challenges that come with moving different distances, especially when it comes to pitching and hitting. The timing involved with hitting from a 45-foot or 46-foot mound is quite a bit different than hitting from a 52 or 53-foot mound. Certainly we can evaluate him like that, but I think the encouragement you would see from us would be to have even the highest ability players at least play from a consistent distance. So it's certainly something we can sidebar and talk about, but that's my, I guess, initial thoughts on the question.
Thank you.
Yep. Tom, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I just reiterate Seth's point. We're flexible. You know, I think the whole organization, 709 baseball, was kind of built on flexibility. We moved away from Little League because they were very stringent about ages and where kids should be playing at what age. And I think really what it comes down to is what's the best fit for your kid and maybe for your family as well, and what makes the most sense. So we can take that offline and talk through that as you wish.
Any other questions on levels of play? Okay, we talked, the next agenda item is something that I think we kind of jumped the gun on there up front because it got into registration deadlines, but I think we've already covered the evaluation and location of evaluation agenda item. That brings us into, I believe, recreational play dates. Let me confirm that. House League schedule, yep. So here's our standard House League schedule. For those that have been part of 709 in the past, it will be the same in terms of dates. The majors level will be playing Monday and Wednesday nights. Typically those games start at 6 or 6:30 Sometimes when they travel, there might be 2 games at a particular field, and there may be a 5:30 and a 7 o'clock start at some of the areas that have lights, i.e. Wheeler, as an example. So that will be Mondays and Wednesdays for the majors kids. Modifieds will also be Monday and Wednesday. Again, standard start times for our home games will be 6 o'clock. Their pregame will start an hour before the start of the game. Full field, the 14 and 15-year-old full field league will be Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay. One big change, or not big change, but significant change from last year is that we are going to move the entire league's house league schedule up 1 week. So our majors programming games will start the week of May 9th. Our modified recreational league will start the week of May 16th. And our full field games will start the week after Memorial Day. Okay, the reason we're moving it up is there was some overlap last year just based on COVID and other delays that pushed our season and playoffs into the second week of August. And that created some conflict with the fall sports. And in an effort to be cooperative and try to avoid conflicts for our families, we will be rounding up playoffs the first week of August. So by moving up a week in the front end of the season, that allows us to complete a week earlier in the back end of the season. Kyle, your hand is raised. Your question.
Hi, actually, Anna. I have a question about the seventh graders and older and the house league play starting in May in the high school, if they're playing high school league.
Sure.
Are they going to be overlapping with that, or how are we?
The kids that will play full field and
Okay.
the modified kids, the reason that those seasons start a little bit later is for that reason exactly. It's not too typical that 7th and 8th graders are playing much, varsity time. Usually a JV schedule wraps up at the end of May there.
Okay,
or
that's
earlier. But with the reason that we start the full field league a little bit later is for that exact reason. If there's some conflict with the modified ages, 7th graders, 8th graders, still playing on the modified field, we will make that work with the schedule. If we have a big group of kids that isn't able to participate, we have flexibility with the scheduling, and if we have to push back a week, we'll have to push back a week. So typically our numbers are such that it works, and maybe a player or two has to miss a game or two at the start of the season, but that is completely acceptable, and I think everyone understands that situation.
Okay. We didn't know when the JV teams were done, so.
Yeah, and
This is
every school is a little different there with how long they schedule in, but typically the playoffs for high school start at the end of May and into June. So usually the JV teams are done by the time playoffs start.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, Anna. I got a text question here, I believe from Blaine Hunter, whose microphone is not working well. He's asking if we're playing in the same league as last year for the purposes of majors. That's also another significant change here that I'm glad he asked the question about. So last year and in years prior, we take a lot of pride in the fact that our house league teams across the board really do quite well. To a point where sometimes some of the teams we play against aren't necessarily the most competitive, and it creates inequities and not the most ideal development situation when you're 10 running a team or worse. And it's an easy place for kids to potentially lose focus or pick up bad habits. So one of the corrections that Quad Cities has made this year is they're going to offer associations the ability to play in what they are calling the AA House League, which is associations that will have more competitive teams. And other associations will be allowed to play in a less competitive A House League. So What that will mean is we'll be playing against more competitive teams throughout the week. And as part of that, I've also asked Quad Cities to make sure that each one of our majors teams has the opportunity to play each other at least twice. So somewhere between 10 and 12 of your regular season games will be played against our fellow Duluth 709 teams, what that means is that we will play the remaining teams in the AA division probably once. So that will allow us to play more home games since we're playing each other more, while still allowing us to come visit and do some interleague games against our friends in a more competitive division. So that should bring the games closer. That should make it more convenient on families with a little less travel and create for a better experience. So we certainly got some good feedback from some of our families last year in that regard, and have been able to implement some of those changes along with the associations that make up Quad Cities. Crystal posts, missed the first meeting. I missed the evaluation location and times. Sure, Crystal, we will, this entire meeting is going to be recorded. It's being recorded now and will be posted on our website. We certainly did cover all of those things. Tom, just to answer her question real quick, can you give us a quick summary one more time of the week of evaluations and where that will be?
In general, it's the week of March 7th. Can everybody hear me? I had to switch to my phone. I got to get on the road here, but can you guys hear me? Okay. Week of March 7th, all the information, if you go to Duluth 709 baseball with the dates, is on the right-hand side of the homepage. You'll see a calendar there. We don't have, again, specifically which days and times each age group will be, but the dates in general are all listed there. It is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday during that week, and then Saturday, the 12th, I believe, is the day. Would be the final possible eval day.
Okay, and that will all take place on UMD's campus at the Ward Wells Fieldhouse. Dan Tanberg asked a question in regards to, will the modified field have a similar arrangement to majors with more in-league games? We do plan on playing each other more at the modified level. Quad Cities is still trying to figure out the best overall structure, if they will follow suit with what they've done in the majors, or if they're going to go to a slightly different format. But we do intend to play each other more internally as part of House League again there too. Our goal is to have each one of our teams play each other twice. That will be the goal for modified as well. It's just a matter of what we will do with the remaining portion of our House League schedule beyond the games we will play internally. Good question. Any other questions as it relates to House League play?
Seth, Mike Sanoa here.
Is that Liam too?
Liam's he's on the Oculus, I think, playing Win Reality.
Oh, okay.
So does that mean all of the house leagues will all be AA?
Say that again, Mike. You broke up.
I'm sorry. Does that mean that all of the house leagues will be AA teams then throughout 709?
Yes, that's a really good follow-up question, Mike. Our objective always is to make sure that we create even teams, so that we will not have single A teams in House League and double A teams in House League. All of our teams will be double A teams, and it is the objective for all of our teams to be as equal as we can make them.
Perfect. And then one more follow-up, unrelated to that, but more to facilities. I know as the season progressed last year, we got into the waning part of summer where it was getting darker earlier. Some of those Wheeler fields, even with lights, became problematic for some of those later games. Do we know if the city will address that on one of those fields? There are a lot of shadowing and other issues. I'm just curious. And that can be offline.
You know, I think it's a good question. I can tell you that playing a night game is much different than playing a day game, even with lights. But we think it's something that the kids enjoy experiencing. When they're at Wheeler, I would tell you that the standardized game times are probably going to be similar as long as the lights are on. We think that's a different sort of challenge, but something they can handle. In the event you're playing on a field without lights later in the season, potentially we will move the game times up to a potential 5:30 start if we see that the games are not being completed. So
Perfect. Thank you.
all of those game times, one thing to reiterate there, all of those game times will have a a timeline limit on them. We don't want you guys necessarily to have to spend 3 or 4 hours at the park because the game is crawling along. So I think the typical game times for majors and modified is, I believe, is either an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes, and the time limit on a full field game is 2 hours. So just making you guys aware that it's certainly fun, but we don't want it to take up the entirety of your evening either. So just a quick heads up in that regard. I got another question posted in the chat here. When you say majors begin the week of May 9th and modify the week of May 6th, does this mean practices, or that's a really good follow-up question. He's asking if that means practices start that week or games will start that week. That means games will start that week. Practices will be starting leading up to that by our majors and our modified divisions. And then eventually, as the tournament teams get formed, the tournament teams will be predominantly doing the practicing, with our house league teams being able to practice an hour before the lead up to each game to make sure that we're not asking folks to be at the field every day of the week. There's a full hour before the start of each game to conduct practice and continue to improve our skills.
In general, practices will begin as soon as we're able to get on the fields outside at kind of the discretion of each team and their coaches. So practice could start as early as the middle of April if we're able to get outside then. But if we're not, then it's going to start a little later. So there will be communication from each team and the coaching staff as far as what the practice situation will be.
Good question. Any other house league related questions from the group? Okay. Next agenda item will be tournament teams overview and schedule. As mentioned before, our tournament teams are selected following the completion of evaluations. We typically want to make sure that kids interested in playing tournament baseball get to know probably within a week to 2 weeks of the evaluation process which team that they were invited to. As part of registration, you're asked to answer if you're interested in tournament baseball, either as a yes, a no, or an undecided. I will tell you that regardless of how you answer that question, your player would be invited to play on the team that his capability shows him to be at. You certainly have every right to say you're not interested in playing weekend baseball, but don't be surprised if you're getting a call saying, hey, your son looked like this in evaluations. We would love for him to be a part of playing weekend baseball if you guys want to make time for it. And just don't be surprised if we reach out anyway, and know that if you have other things to do on the weekends and just want to play it during the week, that is just fine. But it's also our job to give you guys some feedback as to the success and capability of your sons and daughters. And we use that time following evaluations to give you that feedback. Once those teams are formed and the coaches are named, much like Tom alluded to, practice schedules will be set. Our tournament teams sometimes don't wait to practice until outside is available. Sometimes they'll look for indoor time at Strike Zone or Ganesan School or Lincoln to get in and do some indoor work. Typically speaking, those teams will start weekend tournament play in May, with the coaches deciding which weekends they want to play. We'll collaborate with them on that right around the middle of March, if not sooner, and post all of those intended tournament dates on our website. So you guys have a couple months of advance notice to see which tournament each one of those teams is planning to go to for the purposes of planning your family summers. Most teams will play 1 or 2 out-of-town tournaments that are qualifiers for the state tournament. And then most teams will play 2 or 3 local tournaments, whether it come in the form of the Duluth 709 Golden Spike Tournament in June, the Duluth 709 and Lake Park Art Vaughn Memorial Tournament, the beginning of August, the Proctor tournament in June, or the Cloquet tournament at the end of July. So there's a lot of great local tournaments for us to enter into. So we like to give them kind of a shared experience of not too much out of town travel, 1 or 2 weekends, while still being able to do a lot of things right here in our backyard to make it convenient to play on the weekends. Let's open it up for tournament team questions.
I have a question with regards to tournament teams versus house league. Tournament teams, there will be individual practices by those teams selected by the coaches. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And in most cases, house teams working out of Lake Park get their half an hour before the game. Coaches decide whatever warm-ups, if you want, if you will, and not really, that I've seen in the past, any team practices when the season starts. Of course, they had practices before they started, but not during the regular season. Is that pretty much status quo?
I think I'd beg to differ in terms of what a pregame looks like as part of one of our majors game nights. Like I said, to my knowledge, all, if not most of the coaching staffs are ready to go a full hour before that game starts. They're typically conducting a full throwing session, ground balls, and a full BP set with the kids. For kids that want more practice than that, we also offer them opportunities to come up and practice with tournament teams if they're not choosing to play tournament baseball. So if they do want to practice beyond the hour before each game, you can reach out to us and we can put you in touch with the tournament team coaches, whether you're choosing to play tournament baseball or not, and include you in their practice schedule. So you can practice in addition to.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Anybody else as it relates to the tournament team season? Okay. As always, if you have questions that you think about after the fact, feel free to reach out to us through the email or my phone number or through social media. Let's talk real briefly about safety protocols. We talked about background checks and concussion training at the top of the call. From a COVID standpoint, it's nice to see things are starting to improve. And the seasonality being that baseball is typically in the warmer weather months, as well as being played outside. We will not be requiring any masks at the field this year. Certainly if families or players or coaches are choosing to wear masks, by all means, we respect that choice and no one would ever be judged for that. We would ask, however, if you have any prominent symptoms or things that have you in not good health, to stay home. Just please let your coaches know that you're not feeling well and need to go take a test or whatnot, and give them a heads up that you're not feeling well on a particular evening, whether it be a game or a practice. Beyond that, if there was ever a heart attack at the complex, we do have an IED at the field, defibrillator to help with any emergencies there. And each team is equipped with a first aid kit for any bumps and bruises we may see on the field. Any questions as it relates to safety? Okay. Let's move on to volunteer opportunities. So part of your registration is a volunteer deposit. As part of that volunteer deposit, you're expected to, I believe, volunteer 8 hours at the complex throughout the course of the year. There are a great many ways to get those hours in. If you're not a coach, there's opportunities to pick up pregame or postgame shifts when it comes to field maintenance. One of the big things we would ask for help this year comes in the form of facility maintenance, just simply taking out the garbages behind the dugout at the end of an evening, or picking up the complex just to make sure that it's in good, well-rounded condition for everyone to enjoy throughout the season. Concession stand shifts are also available. And beyond that, you can probably get all 8 hours in if you wanted to spend one day volunteering your time, coordinating a level, running a scoreboard, or doing some facility or field maintenance at one of our 2 host tournaments. So there are a great number of ways to get your volunteer hours in. We really pride ourselves in involving all of our families, not just the players, but we try to make it a very communal opportunity for everyone to enjoy and become friends and create a positive summer experience.
One additional volunteering thought is we're always looking to add members to our board and also to various committees that serve under the board and help us kind of with the season and different events that we have going on, whether it's tournaments or other, fundraising opportunities or things like that. So if you have any interest from an administrative standpoint or just getting involved more at the board level, certainly reach out and let us know. Those are good opportunities, obviously, to put in maybe some more volunteer hours than maybe you'd even want to.
Let's elaborate on some of those committees for a second. So outside of the general board, which makes decisions for the entirety of 709, we have 4 supporting committees. There is the player development committee that Tom leads. It consists of himself, several other longstanding baseball members in the community, and the 3 high school baseball coaches. We have the fields and facilities committee that is run by Brian Grumdahl. That's responsible for the upkeep of the fields and the facilities, making sure that all the equipment is working properly, that all the fields are ready for gameplay, that the lawn is mowed. All those things fall under that committee. We have the tournament committee that is led by Kyle Lynn. That puts on the Golden Spike every year. It's a great event and a fun committee to serve on. To pull that off, we host somewhere between 60 and 80 teams most seasons as part of that event over the course of that June weekend. And he does a really nice job with that group. And then we also have our fundraising committee led by Kelly Larson that helps develop corporate sponsorships and other outside funding opportunities to defray the costs of baseball on our families. Any other questions about volunteerism? Okay, the last item on my agenda is the petitioning process. Aaron Bradford alluded to this a little earlier in the call. Petitioning is where if you had a higher level or a more able player, i.e. an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old wanting to play in majors, or potentially a 11-year-old that wanted to play up in modifieds, there's a petitioning process by which you would petition the board at 709 to take a look at your son or daughter for higher level gameplay than where their grade is typically. So if you have any questions about the petitioning process or want to file a petition, you can reach out to us directly at Duluth 709 Baseball, and we will help you through that process and make sure that we're aware that you're looking for your son or daughter to be considered for a higher level of play. Any questions as it relates to the petitioning process? Okay. There's one new message here. Let me scroll down and see what it looks like. Oh, just somebody needed to drop off. Okay. I think we're just getting to the top of the hour here, right around the 1 hour mark, which is what our goal was, to make sure you guys could get back to having a peaceful and enjoyable evening. Let me open it up to the group for questions one last time here. Anything that we didn't cover, any agenda items you want us to touch on, or anything you want to close the call with just for your own personal clarification?
Yeah, so
go ahead, Richard.
When will the batting cages be put back together?
We typically like to get those erected just as soon as possible. The frost needs to come out of the ground.
Yeah.
That needs to kind of get solid to make sure it doesn't turn into a mud pit. But you will see us erecting those cages, and it should be a lot easier this year with the new facility. So, or the new cages that were built last year. So just as soon as possible to answer your question.
Yeah, and the one thing about that is we need to be pretty certain we're clear of any potential snowstorm, because if those cages are up and we do get significant snowfall, especially spring snowfall, which is probably quite heavy due to the weather, the level of water that's probably in the snow, those things will get destroyed. So we, it depends, but probably not till May.
Understood.
Is the short answer.
Yep.
Okay.
Anna, is that you with your hand up?
It is. Yep. I just wanted to know if Kelly was on this meeting. I was going to ask about a fundraising opportunity that we've seen a lot of, like the 5K runs and different things, running events for fundraisers. And I think that might be something that Lake Park should look into doing, or 709.
Sure.
If the way around as a good fundraising event.
Yeah, I can connect you with her offline, Anna.
Awesome. Great.
No problem. Mike, your hand is up.
Yeah, Seth, I'm just to clarify on the playoffs for rec, the anticipation is that will end like August 5th. Am I correct?
Yeah, the week leading up to Art Vaughn. So Art Vaughn is going to be the weekend of August 5th through 7th.
Yep.
Our goal is to be complete that week leading up to Art Vaughn.
Perfect, because I won't get in trouble with my children again.
There you go. That was our hope in terms of moving up our season 1 week, is to try to make it easier on the families on the back end of the schedule.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else have any closing comments or questions?
Just the one thing I'd like to reiterate is to be aware of the fact that those eval dates will be posted and sent out, not only viewable on the website, but also there will be communication and emails sent out with those dates and times, again, with a little more specific to each age group, which date and time each age will be participating. So if you haven't registered already, Duluth709baseball.com, registration is open. Do that. And then be on the lookout for those communications regarding eval dates.
It's a good topic to close on. That's good. The only thing I wanted to close with is for families and or players looking for additional opportunities to kind of work out before the season. Feel free to reach out to us through the website or through social media, and we can give you some good outlets for indoor facilities and other places that won't accommodate a large group, but could potentially accommodate 6 to 12 people, somewhere along there. So again, if we're able to put some of those things together on our own to accommodate a larger group, we will certainly post those items. But in reality, we can give you outlets to do some of these workouts and preseason work directly through your family and with your friends. So want to make sure that all of the resources at our disposal are also at yours. I think this is a good place to close. This is the first meeting I think I've administered that actually got done on time. So I'm really proud of myself for that. And I wish you all a great and pleasant evening and a super exciting 2022 baseball season. We look forward to seeing you at evaluations and throughout the life of the summer. Let's have another great year together, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight.
Very good. Thank you, Seth.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Seth.
you.
Thanks, Seth. Thank you.